Question 1. The assessment process reveals that an applicant has achieved a score on the International University of Bahrain entrance exam that is slightly below the stated minimum threshold for direct admission, but has demonstrated exceptional extracurricular achievements and a compelling personal statement outlining their commitment to community service. The admissions committee is considering whether to grant admission based on these supplementary factors. Option A. Evaluate the applicant's entrance examination score against the established minimum threshold and consider their supplementary achievements as a factor for exceptional circumstances, strictly within the bounds of the university's stated admissions policy for borderline cases. Option B. Reject the applicant's application outright due to their failure to meet the minimum entrance examination score, as this is a non-negotiable requirement for admission. Option C. Grant direct admission to the applicant based on their strong extracurricular profile and personal statement, as these factors are deemed more indicative of future success and contribution to the university community than the entrance examination score. Option D. Recommend a conditional admission, requiring the applicant to undertake a remedial program before commencing their degree, and then reevaluate their entrance examination performance. Correct answer is A. Evaluate the applicant's entrance examination score against the established minimum threshold and consider their supplementary achievements as a factor for exceptional circumstances, strictly within the bounds of the university's stated admissions policy for borderline cases. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an admissions officer to balance the university's stated commitment to diversity and inclusion with the need to adhere strictly to the established entrance examinations assessment criteria. Misinterpreting or selectively applying these criteria can lead to unfairness and undermine the integrity of the admissions process. The International University of Bahrain entrance exams regulatory framework, as implied by the context of an entrance exam, prioritizes objective assessment based on defined criteria. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's performance against all specified assessment criteria, including the entrance examination results and any supplementary materials, without introducing external biases or personal interpretations that deviate from the established rubric. This aligns with the principles of fair and equitable assessment, ensuring that all candidates are evaluated on the same objective standards as mandated by the university's entrance examination guidelines. The focus remains on demonstrable academic merit and suitability as defined by the exam's parameters, an approach that prioritizes an applicant based solely on their perceived potential to contribute to diversity, without a commensurate performance on the entrance examination criteria, fails to uphold the integrity of the assessment process. This deviates from the established regulatory framework, which emphasizes objective evaluation. Similarly, an approach that dismisses an applicant due to a minor discrepancy in supplementary documentation, when their entrance examination performance is strong and meets the core requirements, overlooks the primary objective of the examination. This demonstrates a lack of adherence to the established hierarchy of assessment criteria, an approach that involves seeking external opinions or informal consultations to justify a deviation from the established criteria, also undermines the transparency and objectivity required by the examination's regulatory framework. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the university's entrance examination regulations and assessment rubrics. This involves systematically evaluating each applicant against all defined criteria. When faced with borderline cases or unique circumstances, professionals should refer back to the established guidelines for clarification or consult with designated review committees as per university policy, rather than making subjective judgments or seeking informal endorsements. The ultimate decision must be justifiable based on the objective evidence and the established assessment framework. Question 2. Analysis of a scenario where an applicant for the International University of Bahrain entrance exam submits academic transcripts that appear to have minor inconsistencies in the grading scale compared to the university's standard. The admissions committee has noted this discrepancy. What is the most appropriate course of action for the university? Option A. Immediately reject the application due to the perceived inconsistency in the submitted academic records. Option B. Proceed with the application without further inquiry, assuming the applicant acted in good faith. Option C. Initiate a formal verification process to clarify the grading scale discrepancy and provide the applicant an opportunity to explain or submit additional documentation. Option D. Contact the applicant's previous institution directly for an explanation without informing the applicant. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the application without further inquiry, assuming the applicant acted in good faith. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to balance academic integrity with the university's admission policies, specifically concerning the verification of submitted documents. The AMA International University of Bahrain entrance exam requires adherence to its established admission guidelines, which implicitly demand honesty and accuracy in all submitted materials. The challenge lies in identifying and responding appropriately to potential discrepancies without making premature judgments or violating fairness principles. The correct approach involves a systematic and transparent process of verification. This means that upon identifying a potential discrepancy in a submitted document, the University Admissions Committee, or designated personnel, should initiate a formal verification process. This process should involve cross-referencing the information with reliable sources, if possible, and providing the applicant with an opportunity to clarify or provide further documentation. This aligns with the principles of due process and fairness, ensuring that decisions are based on verified facts and that applicants are not disadvantaged by unintentional errors or misunderstandings. The regulatory framework for university admissions, while not explicitly detailed here, generally mandates fair and consistent application of policies, which includes thorough verification of applicant credentials. Ethically, this approach upholds the integrity of the admissions process and treats applicants with respect. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the application based solely on the initial discrepancy, without any further investigation or communication with the applicant. This fails to acknowledge the possibility of genuine errors or the need for clarification, potentially leading to an unfair outcome. It also bypasses the established procedural fairness expected in academic admissions. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the discrepancy and proceed with the application as if no issue existed. This undermines the university's admission standards and the integrity of the academic record, potentially admitting students who do not meet the required qualifications. It also sets a precedent for laxity in document verification, which can have long-term implications for the university's reputation and the quality of its student body. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear protocol for handling discrepancies. This protocol should outline steps for identification, investigation, communication with the applicant, and final decision-making. Professionals should always prioritize fairness, transparency, and adherence to established university policies and ethical guidelines. This involves seeking to understand the situation fully before making a judgment and ensuring that all applicants are treated equitably. Question 3. Process analysis reveals that an applicant to the AMA International University of Bahrain's undergraduate program has met the overall minimum GPA requirement, but has a slightly lower score in a core subject area compared to the average of admitted students. The applicant has provided a compelling personal statement detailing their passion for the field and outlining how their diverse work experiences have prepared them for university-level study. How should the admissions committee proceed with evaluating this applicant? Option A. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's entire application, considering their personal statement, work experience, and overall academic record in conjunction with the slightly lower score in the core subject, to determine their potential for success in the program. Option B. Seek informal feedback from current faculty members in the relevant department about the applicant's potential, without a formal review process, to gauge their suitability. Option C. Reject the applicant outright due to the lower score in the core subject, as this indicates a potential weakness that could hinder their academic performance. Option D. Focus solely on the applicant's stated ambition and passion as described in their personal statement, assuming these qualities will compensate for any academic deficiencies. The correct answer is A. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's entire application, considering their personal statement, work experience, and overall academic record in conjunction with the slightly lower score in the core subject, to determine their potential for success in the program. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in academic admissions where an applicant's qualifications, while meeting minimum requirements, raise questions about their preparedness for the rigor of a university program. The challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to inclusivity and providing opportunities with its responsibility to maintain academic standards and ensure student success. The admissions committee must navigate potential biases, subjective interpretations of experience, and the need for a fair and consistent evaluation process, all within the framework of the AMA International University of Bahrain's admission policies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a holistic review that goes beyond mere numerical thresholds. It requires the admissions committee to carefully consider the applicant's stated motivations, the context of their previous academic or professional experiences, and any evidence of their ability to learn and adapt. This approach is justified by the university's commitment to admitting students who demonstrate potential for success, not just those who meet a baseline. It aligns with principles of fairness and due diligence in admissions, ensuring that decisions are based on a comprehensive understanding of the applicant rather than a single data point. The university's own admission guidelines, which likely emphasize a balanced assessment of academic merit and personal attributes, would support this method. Incorrect approach is analysis. Rejecting the applicant solely based on a slightly lower score in one subject, despite meeting overall minimum requirements, fails to acknowledge the possibility of compensating strengths or extenuating circumstances. This approach is overly rigid and may unfairly exclude promising candidates, potentially violating principles of equal opportunity if not applied consistently across all applicants. Focusing exclusively on the applicant's stated ambition, without critically evaluating their demonstrated capabilities or potential for growth, is also problematic. While ambition is important, it must be grounded in a realistic assessment of the applicant's readiness for the program. This approach risks admitting students who may struggle to cope with the academic demands, leading to potential attrition and a disservice to both the student and the university. Seeking external opinions from individuals who may not have a comprehensive understanding of the university's admission criteria or the specific program's demands can introduce bias and inconsistency. Admissions decisions should be based on established internal policies and a thorough review of the applicant's submitted materials, ensuring a standardized and defensible process. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to institutional policies. This involves 1. Understanding and applying the university's admission criteria comprehensively. 2. Conducting a thorough review of all submitted application materials, looking for evidence of academic potential, motivation, and relevant experience. 3. Considering any mitigating circumstances or unique aspects of an applicant's profile. 4. Engaging in collaborative discussion within the admissions committee to ensure a balanced and objective evaluation. 5. Documenting the rationale behind each admission decision to ensure accountability and consistency. Question 4. Benchmark analysis indicates that a student approaches you, a faculty member at AMA International University of Bahrain, expressing significant difficulty with an upcoming assignment and implicitly asking for assistance that goes beyond clarifying concepts, suggesting they are looking for direct help in completing the work. Given the university's strict adherence to academic integrity policies, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Advise the student to find a tutor who can help them complete the assignment, without explicitly defining the acceptable scope of the tutor's assistance. Option B. Ignore the student's request and proceed with grading the assignment as submitted, assuming the student will adhere to academic standards. Option C. Provide the student with pre-written answers or complete sections of the assignment for them to help them meet the deadline. As the primary goal is to support student success, Option D. Engage in a direct conversation with the student about AMA International University of Bahrain's academic integrity policies, explaining the definition of plagiarism and the consequences of academic misconduct, while offering to clarify assignment requirements and provide guidance on research methods within ethical boundaries. The correct answer is D. Engage in a direct conversation with the student about AMA International University of Bahrain's academic integrity policies, explaining the definition of plagiarism and the consequences of academic misconduct, while offering to clarify assignment requirements and provide guidance on research methods within ethical boundaries. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for academic assistance and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The challenge lies in balancing support for students with the imperative to uphold fair assessment practices and prevent academic misconduct. Navigating this requires a nuanced understanding of university policies and ethical obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a direct and transparent conversation with the student about the university's policies on academic integrity and the consequences of plagiarism. This is the most appropriate professional response because it directly addresses the student's actions within the established regulatory framework of AMA International University of Bahrain. It upholds the university's commitment to academic honesty, provides the student with clear guidance on acceptable academic conduct, and initiates a formal process that ensures fairness and due process. This aligns with the university's responsibility to educate students on ethical academic behavior and to maintain the credibility of its assessments. Incorrect approaches analysis. Providing the student with pre-written answers or directly assisting them in completing the assignment without addressing the underlying issue of academic integrity constitutes a failure to uphold the university's policies. This approach bypasses the established procedures for academic misconduct and implicitly condones dishonest behavior, undermining the integrity of the assessment process. It also fails to educate the student on proper academic practices, potentially leading to future transgressions. Ignoring the student's request and proceeding with the assessment without any intervention is also an inappropriate response. While it avoids direct complicity in academic misconduct, it fails to address a potential issue that could impact the fairness of the assessment and the student's learning. It also misses an opportunity to guide the student towards ethical academic conduct, which is a core responsibility of university staff. Suggesting the student seek help from a tutor without clarifying the boundaries of acceptable assistance is problematic. While tutoring can be beneficial, if not properly managed, it can blur the lines between legitimate academic support and academic dishonesty, especially if the tutor provides answers or completes work for the student. This approach lacks the necessary clarity and directness in addressing the student's initial request, which hinted at seeking unauthorized assistance. Professional reasoning. Professionals in an educational setting should always prioritize adherence to institutional policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with situations that may involve academic misconduct, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the relevant university policies and regulations concerning academic integrity and student conduct. 2. Assessing the student's behavior against these policies. 3. Communicating clearly and directly with the student about the policies and potential consequences. 4. Following the established procedures for addressing academic misconduct, which typically involve reporting the incident and allowing for a fair review process. 5. Focusing on education and guidance to promote ethical academic behavior in the future. Question 5. Research into the admission process for AMA International University of Bahrain reveals a candidate who, due to unforeseen personal circumstances, believes their performance on the entrance exam may not accurately reflect their true academic potential. The candidate has approached an admissions officer, requesting a review of their application that bypasses the standard entrance exam scoring, suggesting their previous academic achievements in their home country should be given overriding consideration. What is the most ethically and procedurally sound course of action for the admissions officer to take, strictly within the framework of AMA International University of Bahrain's entrance exam regulations? Option A. To explain to the candidate that while their situation is understood, the entrance exam is a mandatory component of the admission process for all applicants, and their application will be assessed based on the results of this exam and other standard criteria, with no exceptions for bypassing the exam. Option B. To agree to review the candidate's previous academic records in detail, and if deemed sufficiently strong, to recommend to the admissions committee that the entrance exam score be waived entirely for this applicant. Option C. To inform the candidate that while the exam score is important, the university can offer a conditional admission based on their previous academic records, with the condition that they must achieve a certain GPA in their first semester to fully secure their place. Option D. To suggest that the candidate retake the entrance exam at a later date, even if it falls outside the official examination schedule, to allow them more time to prepare and potentially achieve a better score. Correct answer is A. To explain to the candidate that while their situation is understood, the entrance exam is a mandatory component of the admission process for all applicants, and their application will be assessed based on the results of this exam and other standard criteria, with no exceptions for bypassing the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The university entrance exam is designed to evaluate a candidate's foundational knowledge and aptitude, ensuring they meet the required standards for admission. Misrepresenting qualifications or seeking unfair advantages undermines this process and devalues the qualifications of admitted students. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the International University of Bahrain's admission policies and the ethical principles governing academic institutions. This means acknowledging the student's situation, but firmly upholding the integrity of the entrance examination process. The university's regulations, as per its charter, and any associated Ministry of Education guidelines for higher education institutions in Bahrain, would mandate fair and transparent admission procedures. Ethically, this approach prioritizes honesty, fairness, and the maintenance of academic standards. It ensures that all applicants are evaluated on their own merits, preventing any undue advantage. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the standard admission procedures or to create a special pathway for this student. This could involve fabricating or altering academic records, which is a direct violation of academic integrity policies and potentially illegal. Another incorrect approach would be to grant special concessions that are not universally applied to all applicants, thereby creating an unfair advantage and compromising the validity of the entrance exam. Such actions would breach the trust placed in the university by its students, faculty, and the wider educational community, and could lead to disciplinary action against the university itself by regulatory bodies overseeing higher education in Bahrain. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admission policies, ethical guidelines, and relevant Bahraini higher education regulations. Professionals should first identify the core issue, which is the student's request for an accommodation that potentially compromises the integrity of the admission process. They should then consult the established policies and procedures. If the situation is ambiguous, seeking guidance from senior management or the relevant admissions committee is crucial. The decision must be based on fairness, transparency, and the preservation of academic standards, ensuring that any action taken is justifiable and defensible under the university's framework and applicable regulations. Question 6. Quality control measures reveal that a candidate's response to a critical essay question on the International University of Bahrain entrance exam exhibits significant textual similarities to published academic work, raising concerns of plagiarism. The candidate is a strong applicant otherwise. What is the most appropriate course of action for the University Admissions Committee? Option A. Ask the candidate for a verbal explanation of the essay's content, and if satisfactory, overlook the textual similarities without further action. Option B. Initiate a formal investigation into the suspected plagiarism, following International University of Bahrain's academic integrity policy, which includes informing the candidate of the allegations and providing an opportunity for them to respond. Option C. Immediately disqualify the candidate's application and notify them of the decision due to academic dishonesty. Option D. Proceed with admitting the candidate, considering the importance of the entrance exam and the candidate's overall strong profile, and address the similarity informally later. The correct answer is C. Immediately disqualify the candidate's application and notify them of the decision due to academic dishonesty. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the ethical responsibilities of university staff. The challenge lies in balancing the need to uphold the university's standards for academic honesty with the potential consequences for a student, especially during an entrance exam. The decision requires careful judgment to ensure fairness, adherence to International University of Bahrain's regulations, and the integrity of the admissions process. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of investigation, adhering strictly to International University of Bahrain's established academic integrity policy. This approach is right because it ensures due process for the student, provides a fair opportunity for them to respond to the allegations, and allows the university to make an informed decision based on evidence and established procedures. This aligns with the university's commitment to academic honesty and fair assessment practices, as mandated by its internal regulations and general principles of educational governance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediate dismissal of the application without further investigation. This is ethically and procedurally flawed, as it denies the student natural justice and the right to be heard. It bypasses the university's established disciplinary procedures for academic misconduct, potentially leading to an unfair outcome and reputational damage for the institution. Another incorrect approach is to overlook the suspected plagiarism due to the high stakes of an entrance exam. This undermines the integrity of the admissions process and sets a dangerous precedent. It fails to uphold the university's commitment to academic standards and could lead to admitting students who have not demonstrated genuine understanding or effort, thereby compromising the quality of future cohorts. A third incorrect approach is to confront the student informally and accept a verbal explanation without any formal documentation or adherence to university policy. This lacks the rigor required for such a serious matter. It does not create a verifiable record of the incident or the resolution, making it difficult to ensure consistency in decision-making and potentially leaving the university vulnerable to future challenges regarding its disciplinary processes. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, they must identify the relevant university policies and procedures concerning academic integrity and admissions. Second, they should gather all available evidence objectively. Third, they must initiate the formal investigation process as outlined by the university, ensuring the student is informed of the allegations and given an opportunity to respond. Finally, the decision should be made by the appropriate university committee or authority based on the evidence and in accordance with established policies, with clear documentation of the entire process. Question 7. Comparative studies suggest that university admissions processes are susceptible to various forms of risk. In the context of the Amma International University of Bahrain's entrance exam, if an applicant submits academic transcripts that appear to be from a reputable institution, but contain minor inconsistencies in formatting and a slightly unusual grading scale compared to typical Bahraini educational standards, what is the most appropriate initial risk assessment approach? Option A. Forward the application to a specialized external agency for a comprehensive background check without informing the applicant. Option B. Immediately accept the applicant based on the perceived reputation of the issuing institution, assuming the documents are legitimate. Option C. Conduct a preliminary verification of the transcript's authenticity with the issuing institution and seek clarification from the applicant regarding the grading scale and formatting before making a final decision. Option D. Reject the applicant outright due to the presence of inconsistencies, prioritizing the avoidance of any potential misrepresentation. The correct answer is B. Immediately accept the applicant based on the perceived reputation of the issuing institution, assuming the documents are legitimate. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation because it requires an individual to balance the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing admissions under pressure. The challenge lies in discerning genuine academic potential from potential instances of misrepresentation, all while adhering to the Amma International University of Bahrain's established admissions policies and ethical guidelines. Careful judgment is required to avoid both admitting unqualified candidates and unfairly rejecting deserving ones. The correct approach involves a thorough, multifaceted risk assessment that prioritizes verifying the authenticity of submitted documents and assessing the applicant's overall suitability beyond just the submitted grades. This approach is right because it aligns with the university's responsibility to maintain academic standards and uphold the integrity of its admissions process. Specifically, it reflects the ethical obligation to ensure fairness to all applicants and to the institution itself. By seeking corroborating evidence and engaging in a more in-depth evaluation, the university demonstrates due diligence, a key principle in regulatory compliance and ethical conduct within educational institutions. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of admitting students who may not be adequately prepared, thereby protecting the university's reputation and the quality of its academic programs. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the applicant's stated grades, without further verification, fails to acknowledge the inherent risks of document fraud or misinterpretation. This approach is ethically flawed, as it bypasses the fundamental responsibility to ensure the accuracy of admissions data, potentially leading to unfair advantages for some applicants, and undermining the principle of equal opportunity. Another incorrect approach that involves immediately rejecting the applicant based on a single perceived discrepancy, without allowing for clarification or further investigation, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due process and can be seen as an arbitrary decision, failing to uphold principles of fairness and potentially overlooking valid explanations for discrepancies. Such an approach could also lead to the rejection of a potentially strong candidate due to a minor, correctable issue. A further incorrect approach that involves accepting the applicant without any further scrutiny, assuming the documents are legitimate, ignores the potential for misrepresentation and the university's duty to conduct a robust admissions process. This approach exposes the university to significant reputational risk and could compromise the academic standards of its student body. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying potential risks, e.g., document authenticity, misrepresentation of qualifications. Next, it involves evaluating the likelihood and impact of these risks. Based on this evaluation, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed, such as requesting additional documentation, conducting interviews, or verifying information with previous institutions. Finally, a decision is made based on a comprehensive understanding of the applicant's profile, the university's admission criteria, and its ethical and regulatory obligations. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, fair, and defensible. Question 8. Operational review demonstrates that the Amma International University of Bahrain's Admissions Committee is facing a high volume of applications for its upcoming academic year, leading to pressure to expedite the review process. The committee is considering several approaches to manage this workload. Which approach best upholds the university's commitment to academic excellence and fair admissions while mitigating potential risks? Option A. Relying primarily on the applicant's secondary school examination scores as the sole determinant for admission, with minimal consideration for other application components. Option B. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework that evaluates each applicant's academic preparedness, motivation, and potential for success, supported by documented evidence and consistent criteria across all applications. Option C. Allowing individual committee members to make admission decisions based on their personal judgment and intuition regarding an applicant's suitability, without a standardized evaluation process. Option D. Streamlining the review process by only examining the first page of each application to quickly identify potential candidates, thereby reducing the time spent on each review. The correct answer is B. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework that evaluates each applicant's academic preparedness, motivation, and potential for success, supported by documented evidence and consistent criteria across all applications. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions under pressure. The admissions committee must ensure that the risk assessment process is robust and fair, adhering to the Amma International University of Bahrain's established policies and any relevant national educational guidelines. A failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment could lead to admitting students who are not adequately prepared, potentially impacting academic standards and the university's reputation. Conversely, an overly stringent or biased process could unfairly exclude deserving candidates. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented evaluation of each applicant's potential to succeed at the university, considering a range of factors beyond just academic scores. This includes assessing their motivation, prior educational background, and any potential support needs. This approach aligns with the principles of fair and transparent admissions, ensuring that decisions are based on objective criteria and a holistic understanding of the applicant. It also supports the university's mission to provide quality education by admitting students who are likely to thrive. Regulatory frameworks for higher education, even at the entrance exam level, often emphasize fairness, due diligence, and the establishment of clear admission criteria. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on academic scores without considering other factors fails to acknowledge the multifaceted nature of student success. This can lead to overlooking promising candidates who may have overcome challenges or possess strong non-academic attributes. Ethically, this approach is flawed as it may not provide equal opportunity. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal biases of committee members is highly problematic. This introduces subjectivity and can lead to discriminatory practices, violating principles of fairness and potentially contravening any guidelines on equal opportunity in education. Such an approach lacks the rigor and objectivity expected in a formal admissions process. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness, such as making decisions based on a cursory review of applications, undermines the integrity of the admissions process. This can result in errors, missed information, and ultimately, poor admissions decisions that do not serve the best interests of the university or the students. This approach demonstrates a lack of professional diligence. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that includes 1. Understanding and adhering to all university policies and relevant regulatory guidelines. 2. Establishing clear, objective, and consistently applied admission criteria. 3. Implementing a structured process for evaluating applications, including risk assessment. 4. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them. 5. Regularly reviewing and refining the admissions process to ensure its effectiveness and fairness. Question 9. Regulatory review indicates that AMA International University of Bahrain is facing pressure to meet its enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year. In this context, which of the following approaches to assessing potential applicants would best uphold the university's commitment to academic integrity and regulatory compliance? Option A. Relying on informal feedback from admissions staff and current faculty regarding the perceived quality of applicants, rather than conducting a formal, structured evaluation of each candidate. Option B. Focusing admissions efforts on recruiting from specific educational institutions or regions that have historically provided a high volume of applicants, assuming their candidates are generally well prepared. Option C. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework that systematically identifies, analyzes, and mitigates potential risks in the admissions process, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated against established academic and ethical criteria. Option D. Prioritizing the admission of applicants who appear most likely to meet enrollment targets, even if it means expediting the review process and potentially overlooking minor discrepancies in their applications. The correct answer is C. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework that systematically identifies, analyzes, and mitigates potential risks in the admissions process, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated against established academic and ethical criteria. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for qualified students and the ethical imperative to ensure a robust and fair admissions process. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create an environment where shortcuts in risk assessment might be considered, potentially compromising the integrity of the admissions process and the academic standards of AMA International University of Bahrain. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with regulatory compliance and ethical responsibilities. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and systematic evaluation of potential risks associated with the admissions process. This includes identifying vulnerabilities, assessing their likelihood and impact, and developing mitigation strategies. Specifically, it requires a proactive stance in understanding the regulatory framework governing university admissions in Bahrain, which would likely emphasize fairness, transparency, and the admission of candidates who meet established academic and ethical criteria. This approach aligns with the principles of good governance and risk management expected of educational institutions, ensuring that the university admits students who are genuinely prepared for higher education and who will contribute positively to the academic community. Adhering to established risk assessment methodologies, such as those outlined in General Best Practices for Institutional Risk Management, would be paramount. An approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets without a thorough risk assessment fails to acknowledge the potential for admitting unqualified or unsuitable candidates. This could lead to academic underperformance, increased dropout rates, and reputational damage to the university. Ethically, it breaches the principle of fairness to both admitted students and those who were not admitted due to a potentially compromised process. An approach that focuses solely on the perceived ease of admitting candidates from certain backgrounds, without a proper risk assessment of their academic preparedness or potential for success, is discriminatory and violates principles of equal opportunity. It also overlooks the risk of admitting individuals who may not meet the university's academic standards or who may pose other risks to the university community. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or informal assessments rather than structured risk evaluation is inherently unreliable. This introduces significant uncertainty and increases the likelihood of making poor admissions decisions, which can have long-term negative consequences for the university and its students. It also fails to demonstrate due diligence and adherence to best practices in risk management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework should include 1. Risk identification, brainstorming all potential risks in the admissions process. 2. Risk analysis, evaluating the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. 3. Risk evaluation, prioritizing risks based on their severity. 4. Risk treatment, developing and implementing strategies to mitigate or manage the prioritized risks. 5. Risk monitoring and review, continuously assessing the effectiveness of mitigation strategies and updating the risk assessment as needed. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with regulatory and ethical obligations. Question 10. Consider a scenario where you are involved in the administration of the Amma International University of Bahrain entrance examination. An applicant, who is a close relative, approaches you and expresses significant anxiety about the upcoming exam due to personal circumstances that may affect their performance. They subtly hint at needing any advantage they can get. What is the most appropriate course of action to uphold the integrity of the examination process? Option A. Inform the University Admissions Committee or the designated examination authority about the applicant's relationship and the situation, seeking their guidance on how to proceed in accordance with university policy. Option B. Discreetly offer the applicant some general information about the types of questions that might appear on the exam to help them prepare better. Option C. Advise the applicant to withdraw from the examination if they feel unprepared, without mentioning your relationship or the specific concerns they raised. Option D. Provide the applicant with general study tips and reassurance, while assuring them that you will ensure they are treated fairly during the examination. The correct answer is A. Inform the University Admissions Committee or the designated examination authority about the applicant's relationship and the situation, seeking their guidance on how to proceed in accordance with university policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the applicant to balance the university's need for accurate admissions data with the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of the assessment process. The applicant's personal circumstances create a potential conflict of interest, and their proposed action could compromise the fairness and validity of the entrance exam. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards while addressing the applicant's situation. The correct approach involves prioritizing transparency and adherence to the established examination guidelines. This means informing the University Admissions Committee or the designated examination authority about the applicant's situation and seeking guidance on how to proceed. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it upholds the principle of fairness to all candidates by ensuring that no one receives an undue advantage or disadvantage. It aligns with the general ethical principles of academic integrity and the specific regulations governing university entrance examinations, which typically mandate impartiality and standardized testing conditions. By reporting the situation, the individual acts as a responsible gatekeeper, preventing potential breaches of examination rules and maintaining the credibility of the Amma International University of Bahrain's admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to allow the applicant to proceed with the examination without disclosing the potential conflict of interest. Failure to report a situation that could compromise the integrity of the exam is a direct violation of ethical duties and likely contravenes the university's examination policies, which are designed to ensure a level playing field. Another incorrect approach would be to provide the applicant with advance information about the exam content, even with good intentions. This constitutes a serious breach of confidentiality and academic dishonesty, undermining the validity of the assessment and creating an unfair advantage for that specific applicant, which is strictly prohibited by examination regulations. Finally, ignoring the situation and hoping it resolves itself is also an unacceptable approach. This inaction demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a failure to uphold the ethical standards expected of individuals involved in the admissions process, potentially leading to a compromised examination outcome and reputational damage to the university. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves identifying potential conflicts of interest, understanding relevant policies and guidelines, seeking clarification from appropriate authorities when in doubt, and acting with transparency and integrity. The framework should guide them to choose the path that best protects the fairness and credibility of the process, even if it presents personal inconvenience or requires difficult conversations. Question 11. Compliance review shows that AMA International University of Bahrain's current risk assessment process for its entrance examination primarily relies on analyzing data from the previous 3 examination cycles and focuses on identifying only those risks that have historically resulted in significant administrative disruptions. Which of the following approaches best addresses the limitations of this current process? Option A. Increasing the frequency of the risk assessment to a quarterly basis without altering the scope or methodology of the analysis. Option B. Delegating the entire risk assessment process to the IT department, as most disruptions are technology-related. Option C. Expanding the risk assessment to include a forward-looking analysis of emerging technological threats and potential changes in applicant demographics, alongside a review of best practices in international university admissions risk management. Option D. Conducting a single, comprehensive risk assessment every 5 years to capture all potential risks comprehensively. The correct answer is C. Expanding the risk assessment to include a forward-looking analysis of emerging technological threats and potential changes in applicant demographics, alongside a review of best practices in international university admissions risk management. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions, balancing the need for robust risk assessment with the practicalities of resource allocation and the potential for overlooking emerging threats. The challenge lies in ensuring that the risk assessment process is not merely a procedural exercise, but a dynamic and effective tool for safeguarding the university's operations and reputation. A thorough risk assessment requires a systematic identification, analysis, and evaluation of potential risks, followed by the development of appropriate mitigation strategies. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and proactive risk assessment that considers both internal and external factors. This includes evaluating the likelihood and impact of identified risks, prioritizing them based on their severity, and developing actionable mitigation plans. This aligns with best practices in institutional governance and risk management, emphasizing a forward-looking perspective to prevent potential issues before they materialize. Regulatory frameworks, even at the university entrance exam level, implicitly encourage such diligence to ensure the integrity and sustainability of the institution. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on historical data without considering new or evolving risks. This fails to acknowledge that the threat landscape is constantly changing, and past incidents may not be indicative of future vulnerabilities. Another incorrect approach is to focus only on high-impact, low-likelihood events, neglecting more frequent, lower-impact risks that can cumulatively cause significant disruption. Furthermore, an approach that lacks clear ownership and accountability for risk mitigation actions will likely result in ineffective implementation and a false sense of security. Professionals should approach risk assessment by first establishing a clear understanding of the university's objectives and operational environment. This involves engaging relevant stakeholders to identify potential threats across all functional areas. Subsequently, risks should be systematically analyzed for their potential impact and likelihood. The prioritization of risks should then inform the development of tailored mitigation strategies, with clear responsibilities assigned and timelines established for implementation and review. Regular monitoring and updating of the risk assessment are crucial to ensure its continued relevance and effectiveness. Question 12. The investigation demonstrates that the admissions department at AMA International University of Bahrain is facing pressure to expedite the processing of applications for the upcoming academic year due to an increased volume of submissions. To address this, the department head is considering various strategies for assessing the risks associated with this accelerated process. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for risk assessment in this context? Option A. Conduct a rapid review of past application processing times and identify any bottlenecks that cause delays, then implement minor adjustments to workflow to address these specific bottlenecks. Option B. Develop a comprehensive risk register by systematically identifying all potential threats to the integrity and efficiency of the admissions process, analyzing the likelihood and impact of each threat, and proposing targeted mitigation plans. Option C. Rely on the experience of senior admissions staff to intuitively identify the most significant risks and implement their immediate suggestions without formal documentation or analysis. Option D. Focus exclusively on the risk of missing application deadlines for candidates, implementing measures solely to ensure all applications are processed by the final submission date, regardless of the thoroughness of the review. The correct answer is A. Conduct a rapid review of past application processing times and identify any bottlenecks that cause delays, then implement minor adjustments to workflow to address these specific bottlenecks. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's need for timely admissions data and the ethical obligation to ensure the accuracy and integrity of that data. Hasty or incomplete risk assessment could lead to flawed admissions decisions, potentially admitting unqualified candidates or unfairly rejecting deserving ones, which undermines the academic standards and reputation of International University of Bahrain. Careful judgment is required to balance efficiency with thoroughness. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats to the admissions process, analyzes their likelihood and impact, and proposes mitigation strategies. This aligns with best practices in institutional management and quality assurance, which are implicitly expected of any reputable educational institution. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to due diligence and responsible governance, ensuring that decisions are based on reliable information and that potential pitfalls are proactively addressed. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes fairness and accuracy in the admissions process, upholding the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed without adequate risk identification would fail to uncover potential vulnerabilities, such as data entry errors, biased evaluation criteria, or external interference, leading to compromised admissions outcomes. This would be a regulatory failure, as it neglects the implicit requirement for robust internal controls and operational integrity expected of an educational institution. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes a single risk factor while ignoring others would result in an unbalanced and incomplete assessment. For instance, focusing only on the risk of delays without considering the risk of inaccurate data would leave the university exposed to significant operational and reputational damage. This represents an ethical failure by not undertaking a holistic and fair evaluation of all relevant risks. A further incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or assumptions rather than structured analysis would lack the rigor necessary for effective risk management. This would be a professional failure as it deviates from established methodologies for identifying and assessing risks, leading to potentially ineffective or even counterproductive mitigation strategies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This typically includes 1. Risk identification, brainstorming and documenting all potential risks. 2. Risk analysis, assessing the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. 3. Risk evaluation, prioritizing risks based on their significance. 4. Risk treatment, developing and implementing strategies to mitigate, transfer, avoid, or accept risks. 5. Risk monitoring and review, continuously tracking risks and the effectiveness of mitigation strategies. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with the institution's objectives and ethical responsibilities. Question 13. The analysis reveals that the International University of Bahrain's Admissions Committee is tasked with evaluating a diverse pool of applicants for its undergraduate programs. While the university aims to meet its enrollment targets to ensure financial sustainability, it also prioritizes admitting students who are academically prepared and likely to succeed. The committee is considering different strategies for assessing applicant risk. Which of the following approaches best aligns with responsible risk assessment principles for a university admissions process? Option A. Implementing a holistic review process that considers academic achievements, extracurricular involvement, personal essays, and potential support needs to gauge a candidate's likelihood of success and fit with the university. Option B. Prioritizing applicants with the highest standardized test scores and GPA, while deferring consideration of other factors until after enrollment. Option C. Focusing primarily on meeting the set enrollment quota for each program, with minimal scrutiny of individual applicant qualifications beyond basic eligibility. Option D. Relying solely on interviews to assess applicant suitability, as they provide a direct personal impression of each candidate. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing applicants with the highest standardized test scores and GPA, while deferring consideration of other factors until after enrollment. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical imperative of responsible risk management. The admissions committee must make informed decisions that align with the university's academic standards and financial sustainability, while also considering the potential impact on student success and the institution's reputation. Careful judgment is required to avoid both overly conservative admissions that might limit access to deserving candidates and overly lenient admissions that could compromise academic quality or lead to higher attrition rates. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that considers multiple facets of applicant profiles, including academic preparedness, potential for success in the chosen program, and alignment with the university's mission and values. This approach is right because it systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential risks associated with admitting each candidate. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of good governance and due diligence expected of educational institutions. By considering academic indicators, qualitative factors, and potential support needs, the committee can make more informed decisions that mitigate risks related to student performance and retention, thereby safeguarding the university's academic integrity and financial health. This proactive stance is ethically sound, as it aims to ensure that admitted students are likely to thrive and benefit from their education, and that the university resources are used effectively. An approach that solely focuses on meeting enrollment targets without a thorough evaluation of applicant suitability represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This would prioritize short-term financial gains over the long-term academic well-being of students and the institution, potentially violating principles of responsible institutional management. Similarly, an approach that is overly reliant on a single metric, such as past academic scores, without considering other relevant factors, fails to conduct a holistic risk assessment. This can lead to the exclusion of promising candidates who may have overcome challenges or possess other strengths, and conversely, the admission of students who may not be adequately prepared, thereby increasing the risk of academic failure and attrition. An approach that ignores potential support needs for admitted students also fails to adequately assess risk, as it does not account for the resources required to ensure student success, potentially leading to increased support costs and lower retention rates. Professionals in university admissions should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the university's admission criteria and risk tolerance. This framework should involve a multifaceted evaluation process that incorporates both quantitative and qualitative data. Regular review and calibration of the assessment tools and processes are crucial to ensure their effectiveness and fairness. Furthermore, fostering a culture of ethical responsibility and continuous professional development among admissions staff is paramount to navigate complex decisions and uphold the institution's commitment to academic excellence and student welfare. Question 14. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new, unproven online assessment platform could significantly reduce administrative costs for the Amma International University of Bahrain. However, concerns have been raised by the academic department regarding the platform's reliability and its potential impact on the fairness of student evaluations. Which approach best addresses this situation? Option A. Proceed with the implementation of the new platform immediately to realize the cost savings, deferring any further evaluation until after it is in use. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive pilot study of the new platform with a representative sample of students and courses, gathering detailed feedback and performance data before a full-scale adoption decision. Option C. Implement the new platform for non-critical assessments only, while continuing to use the existing system for major examinations. Option D. Reject the new platform outright due to the initial concerns raised by the academic department, without exploring potential solutions or modifications. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the implementation of the new platform immediately to realize the cost savings, deferring any further evaluation until after it is in use. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing potential financial gains against the ethical imperative of ensuring student welfare and academic integrity. The university, like any educational institution, has a responsibility to uphold its standards and provide a fair assessment process. Introducing a new, unproven assessment method, even if it promises cost savings, carries inherent risks that must be thoroughly evaluated. The professional challenge lies in discerning whether the perceived benefits of the new method outweigh the potential negative consequences for students and the institution's reputation, all within the established regulatory framework for higher education in Bahrain. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes student outcomes and academic integrity. This means meticulously identifying potential risks associated with the new assessment method, such as its validity, reliability, fairness, and the potential for bias or technical failures. It requires consulting with academic staff, students, and relevant stakeholders to gather diverse perspectives and anticipate challenges. Furthermore, it necessitates developing robust mitigation strategies for identified risks and ensuring that any proposed changes align with the AMA International University of Bahrain's mission, academic policies, and any applicable Ministry of Education guidelines for assessment. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible, as it safeguards the quality of education and the fairness of the assessment process, which are paramount in the higher education sector. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the cost savings identified in the cost-benefit analysis, without adequately considering the potential negative impacts on academic quality and student experience. This approach fails to acknowledge the university's ethical duty to provide a fair and reliable assessment. Another incorrect approach would be to implement the new assessment method without proper piloting or consultation, thereby exposing students to untested and potentially flawed evaluation procedures. This disregards the principle of due diligence and could lead to significant reputational damage and student dissatisfaction. A third incorrect approach would be to dismiss concerns raised by academic staff or students regarding the new method, prioritizing expediency over a thorough and inclusive evaluation process. This demonstrates a lack of respect for professional expertise and stakeholder input, undermining trust, and potentially leading to the adoption of an unsuitable assessment strategy. Professionals should approach such decisions by first establishing a clear understanding of the university's strategic objectives and its commitment to academic excellence and student welfare. They should then engage in a structured risk assessment process, which includes identifying, analyzing, and evaluating potential risks and benefits. This process should be collaborative, involving relevant departments and stakeholders. Decision-making should be guided by a framework that prioritizes ethical considerations, regulatory compliance, and the long-term sustainability and reputation of the institution. A thorough review of existing policies and any relevant Bahraini Ministry of Education directives concerning academic assessment is crucial before any significant changes are implemented. Question 15. To address the challenge of ensuring academic integrity during the admissions process, a prospective student at AMA International University of Bahrain is asked to consider how to best identify and mitigate potential risks of academic misconduct. Which of the following represents the most effective and ethically sound approach? Option A. Implementing extensive and intrusive monitoring systems for all applicants to detect any potential rule-breaking, regardless of individual suspicion. Option B. Developing a comprehensive understanding of the university's academic integrity policies and common forms of misconduct, and considering how to foster an environment that discourages such behavior through clear communication and education. Option C. Assuming that all applicants will naturally adhere to academic integrity standards without the need for any proactive risk assessment or preventative measures. Option D. Relying solely on post-admission disciplinary actions to address any instances of academic dishonesty that may be discovered after a student has been admitted. The correct answer is B. Developing a comprehensive understanding of the university's academic integrity policies and common forms of misconduct, and considering how to foster an environment that discourages such behavior through clear communication and education. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a prospective student at Amma International University of Bahrain by requiring them to demonstrate an understanding of risk assessment principles in a context relevant to academic and professional integrity. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate method to proactively identify potential academic misconduct before it occurs, balancing the need for a secure academic environment with the rights and expectations of students. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both effective in mitigating risk and ethically sound, aligning with the university's commitment to academic excellence and fairness. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a proactive risk assessment framework that focuses on identifying potential vulnerabilities and developing preventative measures. This aligns with best practices in risk management, which emphasize anticipating and mitigating risks before they materialize. For a university entrance exam context, this translates to understanding the university's policies on academic integrity, recognizing common forms of academic misconduct, and considering how to foster an environment that discourages such behavior. This approach is ethically sound as it aims to uphold the integrity of the academic process for all students and the institution, while also providing clear guidelines and expectations to prospective students. It demonstrates a commitment to fairness by addressing potential issues upfront rather than solely reacting to incidents. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on punitive measures after an incident has occurred is procedurally reactive and fails to address the root causes of potential misconduct. This is ethically problematic as it can lead to a climate of distrust and may unfairly penalize individuals who may have acted out of ignorance rather than malice. It also places a greater burden on the university to investigate and adjudicate, which is less efficient than prevention. Another incorrect approach would be to implement overly restrictive surveillance measures that infringe upon student privacy and create an atmosphere of suspicion. While security is important, such measures can be counterproductive, fostering resentment and undermining the trust essential for a positive learning environment. This approach fails to consider the ethical implications of intrusive monitoring and can be seen as a violation of reasonable expectations of privacy. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore potential risks altogether, assuming that all applicants will adhere to academic integrity standards without any proactive measures. This is professionally negligent and ethically irresponsible, as it leaves the university vulnerable to academic misconduct and compromises the value of its degrees. It fails to uphold the university's duty to maintain academic standards and protect the integrity of its admissions process. Professional reasoning. Professionals in academic settings should adopt a risk-based approach to academic integrity. This involves a continuous cycle of identifying potential risks, e.g., plagiarism, cheating, falsification of data, assessing their likelihood and impact, and implementing appropriate controls. These controls should be a combination of preventative measures, e.g., clear policy communication, educational resources on academic integrity, secure examination procedures, and detection mechanisms. The decision-making process should prioritize fairness, transparency, and the upholding of academic standards, ensuring that any measures taken are proportionate and ethically justifiable. Question 16. The review process indicates that the admissions committee for the Amma International University of Bahrain is considering several approaches to evaluate a new cohort of applicants. Which approach best aligns with a robust risk assessment framework for ensuring academic integrity and fairness in the admissions process? Option A. Prioritizing applicants who demonstrate the highest potential for future financial contributions to the university, irrespective of minor deviations in their academic profiles. Option B. Systematically evaluating each applicant's academic record, extracurricular achievements, and personal statements against established university admission criteria, while also identifying any potential red flags or inconsistencies that might warrant further investigation. Option C. Relying on the subjective impressions and recommendations of faculty members who have had informal interactions with some of the applicants. Option D. Focusing on meeting a predetermined enrollment quota by selecting candidates who appear most likely to accept an offer, even if their academic qualifications are borderline. The correct answer is B. Systematically evaluating each applicant's academic record, extracurricular achievements, and personal statements against established university admission criteria, while also identifying any potential red flags or inconsistencies that might warrant further investigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to provide a fair and transparent admissions process. The admissions committee must assess applicants holistically, considering various factors beyond just academic scores, while adhering to the International University of Bahrain's established admissions policies and ethical guidelines. The risk assessment approach is crucial to identify potential biases, ensure equitable treatment of all candidates, and maintain the reputation of the university. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented evaluation of each applicant's profile against predefined criteria, with a specific focus on identifying any potential risks to the integrity of the admissions process. This includes looking for inconsistencies, unusual patterns, or any information that might suggest an applicant does not meet the university's standards or has misrepresented themselves. This aligns with the university's ethical obligation to select qualified candidates fairly and transparently, and to uphold the principles of academic merit and equal opportunity, as likely stipulated in the International University of Bahrain's Admissions Handbook, and any relevant Bahraini higher education regulations concerning admissions. A thorough risk assessment ensures that decisions are defensible and free from undue influence or bias. An approach that focuses solely on achieving a specific enrollment target without a rigorous assessment of individual applicant qualifications is ethically flawed. It risks admitting underqualified students, potentially compromising academic standards and the university's reputation. This would violate the principle of meritocracy and could be seen as a failure to adhere to the university's stated admissions criteria, which are designed to ensure academic rigor. An approach that prioritizes applicants based on personal connections or perceived future financial contributions, rather than their academic suitability and adherence to admissions criteria, is a clear ethical breach. This introduces bias and undermines the fairness of the process, potentially violating principles of equal opportunity and merit-based selection. Such an approach could also contravene any regulations or internal policies that mandate objective and impartial admissions. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or subjective impressions without seeking corroborating information or applying objective assessment criteria is also problematic. This introduces a high degree of subjectivity and potential for bias, making the admissions decisions less defensible and potentially unfair to applicants. It fails to demonstrate a commitment to a structured and evidence-based risk assessment process. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding and adhering to the university's established admissions policies and ethical codes. This involves clearly defining the criteria for admission, developing a systematic process for evaluating applicants, and incorporating a risk assessment component to identify and mitigate potential issues. Documentation of the assessment process and the rationale for decisions is paramount for accountability and transparency. Regular training on ethical considerations and fair admissions practices is also essential. Question 17. What factors determine an applicant's eligibility for the International University of Bahrain entrance examination, as outlined by the university's admission framework and relevant Bahraini higher education guidelines? Option A. The applicant's personal relationship with university faculty or administrative staff. Option B. The applicant's academic qualifications, adherence to submission deadlines, and the completeness of their application documentation. Option C. The applicant's financial capacity to cover tuition fees without any prior academic assessment. Option D. The applicant's perceived ability to secure high-paying employment after graduation. The correct answer is B. The applicant's academic qualifications, adherence to submission deadlines, and the completeness of their application documentation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles governing university admissions, specifically within the context of the International University of Bahrain's entrance examination framework. The challenge lies in identifying the primary determinants of eligibility, which are not solely academic, but also encompass adherence to procedural and ethical guidelines. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between factors that are essential for admission and those that are secondary or irrelevant. The correct approach involves recognizing that the International University of Bahrain's entrance exam regulations, as stipulated by its governing body and any relevant Bahraini higher education directives, will prioritize a holistic assessment of candidates. This assessment typically includes academic merit, demonstrated aptitude for the chosen field of study, and adherence to the university's admission policies. Specifically, the regulations will likely emphasize the submission of accurate and complete documentation, meeting minimum academic prerequisites, and demonstrating a genuine interest in pursuing higher education at the institution. The ethical imperative is to ensure a fair and transparent admissions process, which is achieved by focusing on these core determinants. An incorrect approach would be to assume that factors such as personal connections or the ability to pay tuition fees are primary determinants of admission. Regulatory frameworks for reputable educational institutions, including International University of Bahrain, are designed to prevent undue influence and ensure merit-based selection. Relying on personal connections would violate principles of fairness and equal opportunity, potentially contravening university policies and ethical standards for admissions. Similarly, while financial capacity is a practical consideration for enrollment, it should not be the determining factor for admission to the entrance examination itself, which is designed to assess academic potential. Focusing on the applicant's perceived future earning potential is also an incorrect approach, as entrance examinations are designed to assess current capabilities and suitability for academic programs, not to predict future financial success. Professionals involved in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the university's official admission regulations and any applicable national higher education guidelines. This framework involves systematically evaluating each applicant against clearly defined criteria, prioritizing objective measures of academic achievement and suitability for the program. Transparency and fairness should be paramount, ensuring that all applicants are assessed on the same basis, free from bias or external influence. Question 18. The performance metrics show a slight but consistent dip in the average scores of students admitted in the last two cohorts for a specific foundational course. The head of admissions is concerned about the university's overall ranking and suggests immediately tightening the admission criteria for the upcoming intake to ensure only the highest achieving students are admitted, believing this will naturally boost future performance metrics. Option A. Immediately implement a significant increase in the minimum entry requirements for all programs to attract a demonstrably higher caliber of student, thereby projecting an image of academic exclusivity and rigor. Option B. Attribute the recent dip in performance metrics solely to external economic factors affecting student motivation and study habits, and recommend increased marketing efforts to attract more students despite the current trend. Option C. Focus on showcasing the positive performance metrics from previous cohorts in all university communications and reports, while downplaying or omitting the recent dip in scores to maintain a strong external perception. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the foundational course curriculum, teaching methodologies, and student support services to identify potential areas for improvement that could be impacting student performance, while also investigating the admission criteria and assessment methods used for the last two cohorts to ensure they accurately reflect student potential. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the foundational course curriculum, teaching methodologies, and student support services to identify potential areas for improvement that could be impacting student performance, while also investigating the admission criteria and assessment methods used for the last two cohorts to ensure they accurately reflect student potential. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between achieving desired performance outcomes and adhering to ethical and regulatory standards. The pressure to meet targets can tempt individuals to overlook or rationalize actions that might be questionable. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of performance does not compromise integrity or lead to noncompliance. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the performance metrics, focusing on identifying any anomalies or potential misinterpretations that could lead to incorrect conclusions about student performance or program effectiveness. This approach prioritizes accuracy, fairness, and adherence to the International University of Bahrain's academic integrity policies and any relevant educational regulations. By seeking clarification and ensuring data validity before making decisions, it upholds the university's commitment to providing a high-quality and equitable educational experience. This aligns with the ethical obligation to act with honesty and diligence in all academic and administrative matters. An incorrect approach that involves immediately adjusting admission criteria based on perceived underperformance without a rigorous investigation fails to uphold academic standards and could lead to the admission of unqualified students, thereby undermining the university's reputation and the value of its degrees. This action would likely violate university policies on admissions and academic quality assurance. Another incorrect approach, which involves selectively highlighting positive performance metrics while ignoring negative ones to present a more favorable picture, constitutes a misrepresentation of data. This is ethically unsound and could lead to flawed strategic decisions based on incomplete or biased information, potentially contravening guidelines on transparent reporting and institutional accountability. A further incorrect approach, which involves attributing underperformance solely to external factors without exploring internal program or student support mechanisms, demonstrates a lack of proactive problem-solving and accountability. While external factors can play a role, a professional response requires a comprehensive analysis that includes an assessment of internal processes and potential areas for improvement, in line with best practices in educational management and continuous quality improvement. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes data integrity, ethical considerations, and adherence to institutional policies. This involves a systematic process of 1. Objective data review. Critically examine all available data for accuracy and completeness. 2. Root cause analysis. Investigate the underlying reasons for observed performance, considering both internal and external factors. 3. Policy and ethical alignment. Ensure all proposed actions are consistent with university regulations, academic standards, and ethical principles. 4. Stakeholder consultation. Where appropriate, involve relevant parties in the decision-making process. 5. Transparent communication. Clearly articulate the rationale behind decisions and their implications. Question 19. The performance metrics show a significant number of applicants for the upcoming academic year, exceeding the expected benchmark for a particular standardized aptitude test, while a smaller but notable group falls below the university's historical average for this test. The admissions committee is tasked with reviewing these applications to ensure a fair and effective selection process. Which approach best navigates this situation while adhering to the principles of equitable admissions and academic integrity? Option A. Prioritize applicants who have met or exceeded the benchmark for the standardized aptitude test, while conducting a more rigorous secondary review for those who have not, focusing on other academic achievements and potential. Option B. Implement a strict cutoff score based on the standardized aptitude test, automatically rejecting any applicant who falls below a predetermined threshold, regardless of other application components. Option C. Adjust the benchmark for the standardized aptitude test downwards to accommodate the higher average performance observed, thereby increasing the pool of eligible candidates. Option D. Focus on achieving a specific target number of admitted students who meet the highest percentile of the standardized aptitude test, even if it means significantly reducing the overall number of admitted students. The correct answer is A. Prioritize applicants who have met or exceeded the benchmark for the standardized aptitude test, while conducting a more rigorous secondary review for those who have not, focusing on other academic achievements and potential. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical obligations of ensuring a fair and transparent admissions process. The admissions committee must interpret performance metrics without introducing bias or compromising the integrity of the evaluation. The challenge lies in distinguishing between genuine academic potential and factors that might artificially inflate performance, all within the regulatory framework governing university admissions in Bahrain. The correct approach involves a holistic review of the applicant's profile, considering the performance metrics within the broader context of their educational background, extracurricular activities, and personal statements. This approach aligns with the principles of fair assessment and the ethical duty to evaluate candidates on their merits. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of academic integrity and the guidelines for equitable admissions, which are implicitly expected within the educational sector and likely reinforced by AMA International University of Bahrain's internal policies and any overarching Bahraini educational regulations. This method ensures that the metrics are used as indicators, not as absolute determinants, allowing for a nuanced understanding of each applicant's suitability. An approach that solely focuses on achieving a specific performance metric target, without considering the qualitative aspects of an applicant's profile, is ethically flawed. It risks overlooking promising candidates who may not excel in a single metric, but possess other valuable attributes. This could lead to discriminatory practices if the metric itself is not universally applicable, or if it disproportionately disadvantages certain groups of students. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes meeting a target over a thorough evaluation undermines the principle of meritocracy and could violate internal university guidelines on admissions fairness. Another incorrect approach involves prematurely dismissing applicants based on a single underperforming metric without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge that performance metrics are often indicators and not definitive judgments. It bypasses the opportunity to understand the reasons behind a lower score, which could be due to external factors or a misunderstanding of the assessment. This rigid application of metrics can lead to unfair exclusion and a failure to identify diverse talent. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a multifaceted evaluation. Admissions committees should be trained to interpret performance data critically, understanding its limitations and potential biases. They should employ a rubric that incorporates both quantitative and qualitative assessments, allowing for comprehensive understanding of each applicant. When metrics appear anomalous, a process for further inquiry or contextualization should be in place. Adherence to established university admissions policies and ethical guidelines, prioritizing fairness and transparency, is paramount. Question 20. The performance metrics show a significant number of students achieving scores below the expected threshold in a recent assessment. The university's academic board is reviewing these results to determine the appropriate course of action. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to addressing this situation? Option A. Focus solely on the most recent assessment results to identify students who are underperforming, disregarding any previous academic history or potential external factors. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive review of the assessment itself to identify potential issues with its design, clarity, or administration, while simultaneously gathering information on individual student circumstances and historical performance to understand the context of the low scores before implementing any academic interventions. Option C. Immediately place all students who scored below the threshold on academic probation, as per a strict interpretation of the minimum passing score policy, to signal the seriousness of the academic standards. Option D. Compare the performance of AMA International University of Bahrain students on this assessment with the average scores of students in similar courses at other regional universities to gauge relative performance. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive review of the assessment itself to identify potential issues with its design, clarity, or administration, while simultaneously gathering information on individual student circumstances and historical performance to understand the context of the low scores before implementing any academic interventions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's stated commitment to academic integrity with the practical realities of student performance and potential external pressures. The core difficulty lies in interpreting performance data not just as a measure of academic achievement, but also as a potential indicator of underlying issues that might warrant intervention rather than immediate punitive action. A nuanced approach is necessary to uphold the university's standards while also supporting its student body. The correct approach involves a thorough, multifaceted review of the performance metrics, focusing on identifying patterns and potential contributing factors beyond simple academic deficiency. This includes examining the consistency of performance, looking for sudden declines, and considering external factors that might be impacting students. This approach aligns with the principles of fairness and due process, which are fundamental to academic governance. It also reflects an ethical responsibility to understand the full context of student performance before making decisions that could have significant consequences. Specifically, adherence to AMA International University of Bahrain's internal academic regulations and student conduct policies would necessitate such a comprehensive review before any disciplinary action, is considered. The university's commitment to student welfare, often embedded in its mission statement and student handbooks, also supports this investigative and supportive stance. An approach that immediately flags students for academic probation solely based on a single low score, without further investigation, fails to uphold the principle of fairness. It bypasses the opportunity to understand if the low score was an anomaly, a result of extenuating circumstances, or indicative of a broader issue requiring support. This could violate International University of Bahrain's internal policies on academic progression, which typically outline a process for identifying and addressing academic difficulties, not just immediate sanctions. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the most recent performance data without considering historical trends, ignores the possibility of a temporary setback. Academic performance can fluctuate, and a single poor result might not accurately reflect a student's overall academic capability or commitment. This overlooks the university's likely policy of considering a student's academic record over a period, not just a snapshot. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes external benchmarks or comparisons with other institutions over International University of Bahrain's own established academic standards and procedures is inappropriate. While external comparisons can be useful for strategic planning, they should not dictate the application of internal academic policies. This would be a failure to adhere to the university's specific regulatory framework and governance. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant university policies and academic regulations. This involves gathering all available data, analyzing it holistically, and considering potential mitigating factors. The next step is to consult with relevant academic advisors or student support services to gain further insight. Decisions should then be made based on a comprehensive assessment, ensuring that any actions taken are fair, consistent with policy, and supportive of the university's academic mission and student welfare objectives.